Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. So this set is the Humble and Kind set. This is the Simon Says STAMPtember exclusive release from WPlus9. It's amazing. I love these tulips. They're beautiful. Before we get started, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told you when I had the Neat and Tangled exclusive, which is this is limited time only. Leave, go, go buy the things. There's a link below in the description on YouTube. There's links on my blog. Go purchase the stamps before they are gone if you want them. So this set features basically a couple of different tulips separate and a mini bouquet. So I'm using both of them today. For this particular one, I stamped just the tulips and then I'm masking them and stamping some leaves. The leaves are actually from the Pretty Peony set, which is another WPlus9 stamp set. I just needed to fill in kind of that little field. And then I'm going to be doing some Distress Oxide backgrounds. Basically we're going to look at two different ways to make cards with a Distress ink or Distress Oxide background or whatever other inks you have that you want to blend with, like you do you, whatever you got. And you don't want to mask. So I should note that this mini bouquet I actually built up. I added 2 flowers to it. So anyway, I picked some Distress inks and I'm just blending them on. I'm going from Twisted Citron to Fossilized Amber to Spiced Marmalade to Picked Raspberry and then Seedless Preserves. I wanted to kind of have a fall theme here since we are mid to end September. And also I just think the colors are pretty together. That's just me. The Seedless Preserves has, like, from the time that they came out with that, was one of my favorites, even though I don't really like purple. I don't know what's up with that. But anywho, so this is the two backgrounds together. I am taking a number 2 round brush and I am just flicking on some clean clear water. I'm working on Nina 80 pound cardstock, which is not watercolor paper. So I'm using minimal moisture here. I just really like the way that it looks in the background. And if you have watched any video that I have made in the past month, this Perfect Pearls is not a shock to you because I am currently obsessed with the way that it looks. So I'm just going to scoop out some of that, mix it up on my Ranger craft mat, and then flick that on. Especially with the, like the Distress ink background and something so simple as this, I really love the way that Perfect Pearl looks. But honest to God, I just love the way that it looks on anything right now. Like, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm living with the Perfect Pearls. So I have this bouquet that I had stamped. You probably saw in the beginning, I had one and then I swapped it out for the other. One of them was just a little bit more toward the bottom. And since I already had it stamped out, I decided that this is going to be the one that I kind of cut out and popped up. Now, there is dies that are also available for this stamp set. So if you don't like fussy cutting, that's an option for you, getting the dies. I don't mind it because, like, face it, I make everything one layer. So masking and like cutting things out is just kind of like my thing now. It's just something that I do and I don't even think about how many of the masks I have cut out. But today we're not doing that. Not doing it. I just masked so I could stamp those leaves. That was it. So this is clearly the Copic coloring. I picked out some colors that I felt like would really match that background. That's what I based my color selection on. And then I tried to keep that center light because I thought that it would add some interest to it. I didn't end up keeping it because I didn't like it. But anywho, so I'm going through, I'm adding dimension, adding those layers with just the tip of the marker, putting down little flicks of color. Don't be afraid to flick like from the top and bottom and add your own kind of flair to your coloring. I did a little bit of both. I shaded from the base of the petals. And you always want to make sure that you're shading with the shape of the flower. So this one is kind of facing down and is turned over on itself. So the petals that come over the top, which is actually the bottom from our vantage point right now, those are going to have shading on the bottoms of them because the tips will be lightest. That's the part that's hanging over that will catch the most light. And then I worked all the way out to my darkest color and now I'm working back in to the lightest, filling in more of those petals as I go. There are a lot of little like folded over pieces or partial petals. You just want to make sure that you keep the tips of those really, really light. Those highlighted edges is what is going to give you that dimension and make it so your image looks like it has segregated petals versus like one big mushy flower. So here's the point where I start to realize that that light center will not do. I cannot, I can't just leave it alone. So I started filling it in with a little bit with the RV55. Now I'm on to the lightest color, which is an RV52. It's blending everything nicely, but it's still leaving a lot of those striations because it gives the flower some, those striations, those lines, give the flower some texture. And now I flipped it over and looked at it and I was like, yeah, no, no. And it's not enough dimension. It doesn't look right to me. So now I'm just shading the center of it where the petal is hanging over, and I liked that so much better. I picked a couple of different yellows. The shading for this one is going to be a YR23, which is kind of ironic because it's in the YR family, which is technically the oranges, but the actual name of it is yellow ochre. It says yellow right in the title. I don't understand how they name these things, but whatevs. Moving on. So I did add some yellow to the center of the purple flower, and then I'm going to move on to shade this one yellow. Just a note with the yellow center on top of the purple, sometimes you hear a lot of times me talk about or other people talk about how you shouldn't mix complementary colors. So complementary colors are opposites on the color wheel. Purple's complementary color is yellow, so if you mix them, you will get brown. But it also depends on the hue of purple that you're using. So this one is very red based, which means it's much more on the pink or magenta side. And so mixing that with a yellow isn't necessarily going to give you brown. Would I mix the yellow with like a more blue based purple? No, I probably wouldn't, because it's going to be ugly because there's more blue in it, which blue and yellow make green. So anywho, moving on to the shading of this tulip. When you mix picked raspberry with that spiced marmalade, it gives like a really, really pretty coral color, which I have always loved, even in regular distress inks, which I should also note. You can use, I did say that. I said you could use whatever you wanted. I don't even know what I'm talking about, people. Anyway, moving on. I really have always just liked that coral color, and so I really wanted to have a flower that was that color. So the darkest color that I used is an RO5 to shade, which is really, really strong when you put it down. But when you put the YRO2 over it, it really lifts up that color. And it does make it more of that peachy coral color. So make sure that, you know, don't feel like you have to own all the markers. Like, just play around with what you have and see if you can make them work together. For the leaves, I'm going to show you the coloring on the white because A, it's easier to see, and B, I'm making a point. Like, when am I not making a point? But anyway, so for this one, because of the way that it's drawn, it almost looks like wavy, and I really wanted to emphasize that. So I'm adding the shading on either side of the leaf and leaving my highlight point in the center, which is really going to help make it look like it has some movement. So here I am, this is the intention, is to color the leaves on the actual Distress ink background, Distress Oxide background. I've never colored over Distress Oxides before. I have colored over Distress inks a ton of times, and I didn't really think that there would be any difference, but there kind of is. So I just wanted to show you the difference of colors here. So obviously the one on the right on white, the one on the left over the Distress Oxides, and so you can tell the brightness, the vibrancy of the colors is totally different. But I did notice when I was coloring over the Distress Oxides, it almost created kind of like a film or a protective layer. I don't know if it's because they're pigment based, but it just created this kind of layer, really smooth, like satiny layer over the card base. And so sometimes the colors just kind of sat on top for a minute. Also, the wonderful thing about having pigment already down is I just felt like I did not even need to be as precise. Isn't that crazy? I don't know why. I felt like I didn't. I just felt like there was already color there and I could just kind of work with what was already there and not like really stress about all the details. Even though I colored them the same way. It's not like I'm going to change the way that I color just because it's a different like texture of paper. I don't know. I just felt like because that color was already there, I just kind of didn't have to be as like stressed about it. Also, this is a really great way if you want to kind of like blend your color families to do that without really having to go to work and blend those Copics. I'm going to outline all of my images with a Copic Safe writing pen. This is something that I always do. I love that bold black line. You don't have to do this, totally optional. I just like the way that it looks. So once I had that done, typically I do my white gel pen before I do my black outline, but in this case I wanted the white gel pen to sit on top. I'm going to fussy cut out the image that I colored on white. I prefer to cut them down into smaller pieces so that my scissors aren't pulling on this large piece of paper. Once I had them all cut out, I'm going to take a Memento Tuxedo black marker and just go around the edges to clean up any jagged edges and also to make it look nicer when it's sitting on the actual card base on top of my image. So just going around with that, and then before I start building the cards, because especially that other one is going to be popped up, I wanted to make sure to stamp my sentiments. I am not using the sentiment from that set. I am using the hand-lettered thanks, which is another WPlus9 stamp set, because I am in dire need of thank you cards. That's why. But I really love the sentiment that's included in the set. It is how they named it. It says, "Always stay humble and kind," which I think is a wonderful sentiment, and I will use it on other cards. I'm just not using it on these cards because right now I'm in thank you card crisis mode, and so you just gotta do what you gotta do. So I popped up the pieces on some Scotch foam tape and adhered them right over the card base, and then I just wanted to kind of fill in that area because this particular sentiment is not as large as the other one. So I'm just using some clear droplets. If you have the Nuvo clear drops, you can also use those instead of the clear droplets. I just, either or works, and I just like the way that they look, and this is what I reached for first. So for this one, because the panel is slightly smaller, I'm going to pop it up on some white fun foam and adhere it to a white card base. I just want to note that the supplies are linked below, and normally I only link the things that I use, but I have found that sometimes the things that I use are a bit pricey, so I also linked some cheaper alternatives for you below and on the blog. So that's it. That's the whole card. Like I said, exclusive set. So if you want it, make sure that you find your way over to Simon and pick it up. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.